Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Carolyn and I am a body positive personal trainer and a health and wellness coach focusing in body image and intuitive eating. So today I am very excited to be posting this video. I've been promising it to you if you follow me on Instagram for the past week or so, and it is the thin privilege video. Yes, today we are going to be talking about thin privilege, and specifically this video is for my fellow thin people and it is what I really think that we thin people need to understand about thin privilege. So excuse me, I am getting over a cold. That's why this video was a little bit delayed in posting. So pardon any coughing or sniffling or sneezing. We're all doing our best. So the first thing that I want to do is talk about why I'm even making this video in the first place. And it really got inspired by this awesome conversation that I had with a friend a couple of weeks ago. She texted me with some questions about thin privilege, was sharing some of her perspectives on it, and just wanted to know what I thought. And to me, it really highlighted something that I had kind of forgotten, which is that the term thin privilege is really misunderstood. And because of that, we're missing out on a lot of really awesome social justice that could be happening if us thin people understood thin privilege better and what it is. So today we are going to be going over what thin privilege is, what it's not, and how we can, and like why that's even important, and what understanding thin privilege means for us, and how we can use it to help make the world a better place. How we can help use our understanding of it to help make the world a better place. So what we're going to cover today is what thin privilege is, what it's not, and kind of what the importance of that is, why it's important that you know this, and what you should even be doing with that information. So let's get started. Oh, the other thing is, after that conversation, I went and looked on YouTube to see what kind of video resources were already out there about thin privilege, and I was really disappointed with what I found. So I just realized how important it was that I put something out there like this, because it doesn't really exist yet. There's not a lot of videos that are talking about thin privilege in an accurate and helpful way, and most of the things that come up when you search for thin privilege are really misinformed, really misguided, and really quite harmful in the information and misconceptions that they are disseminating. So we are going to try to remedy that today with this video, and we're gonna get started right now. All right, so the first thing that I wanna cover is what even is thin privilege. We hear the word privilege a lot these days in our current political climate. People talking about male privilege, people talking about white privilege, people talking about all kinds of privilege having to do with different types of identities, classes, things like that. So thin privilege really ties into that conversation of sort of intersectional social justice. And it's sort of hard to define thin privilege because, in a way, thin privilege is the absence of something, all right? Thin privilege, experiencing thin privilege means that you are not experiencing systematic oppression based on your body size or your weight. So let me try to put that in other terms. So basically, thin privilege is having the privilege of not experiencing oppression. So this happens, privilege is experienced when some part of identity is placed in a hierarchy. So in the case of body size is highly political in our society. It is definitely something that is seen in a hierarchical way, meaning that in a very basic sense, thin bodies are considered to be better than fat bodies. So in that hierarchy, you've got thin bodies at the top and you've got fat bodies at the bottom. And in diet culture, which is what we are living in, our Western society is definitely a diet culture that operates within that hierarchy and upholds it and encourages people to kind of be obsessed with thinness and pursue thinness at all costs through dieting and exercise and things like that, which I've talked about in previous videos and all over my social media. So within this system of a diet culture that has a hierarchy based on body size, people who are at the top of that hierarchy are going to experience privilege over the people who are at the bottom of it, because the people who are at the bottom, who have bodies that are considered bad, are also considered to be deserving of mistreatment, of abuse, of violence, and of dehumanization. And if you live in a thin body, it may be hard to believe that some of these things are happening. I know for a long time, I was really unaware of the ways in which fat people really are oppressed in our society. But it's happening, and there's studies to back it up. For one thing, in the workplace, there is a lot of workplace discrimination against people in larger bodies. Studies have shown that managers are less likely to hire fat candidates for jobs, and in the workplace, people who are in larger bodies are generally seen as lazy, as less competent, and less trustworthy. And all of these things affect people in larger bodies' ability to get jobs in the first place or be compensated fairly for their skills and the work that they are doing compared to their counterparts in thinner bodies. Another really excellent example of how our system favors thin bodies over fat ones is in our medical system. So just like people in larger bodies are considered to be less trustworthy in professional settings, they are also less trusted by their doctors. Fat people's pain is taken less seriously. Their complaints when they go to the doctor are less likely to be listened to and taken to heart and examined effectively and correctly. There is a huge discrepancy in how early certain diseases like cancers are caught in people in larger bodies versus people in smaller bodies, which can affect someone's prognosis and their ability to heal and survive from certain diseases. Doctors are more likely to prescribe weight loss instead of other more effective or more relevant treatments for lots of different diseases, and including things like ear infections or joint sprains. You know, someone coming in with a complaint that is very, very likely linked to some kind of virus or infection or accident, and being told that they need to lose weight and possibly even being denied, effective and accurate medical treatment. This is a huge problem that, of course, is not everybody's experience, and not every doctor does this, but it is something that is pretty common in the experience of a lot of people in fat bodies when they seek out medical treatment. And this also, the existence of all of this and the existence of fat phobia in the medical field means that people in larger bodies are also less likely to go to the doctor in the first place, which is another reason why diagnoses can be pushed off so much farther compared to people in smaller bodies. And in my opinion, the biggest, most important evidence that thin privilege exists, that weight stigma, weight bias, fat phobia are all really prevalent in our society, and that we are operating within this hierarchy of bodies, is just the fact that there is a multi-billion-dollar industry that is solely dedicated to making fat bodies smaller. And a lot of times this is, done under the guise of health. Healthism is a completely other issue that we can cover in another video. But basically, there is not a multi-billion-dollar industry that is dedicated to making thin people fat. We think it's more important as a whole, in general, as a society, and especially within the weight loss industry. It is believed that it is more important for fat bodies to get smaller, even if it costs people their health. Even if there are potential really awful side effects, the most important thing is getting smaller. Everything else is secondary. And the fact that that is the message that we are being fed by this huge industry, the fact that these messages persist in pretty much everything that we think about, from food to exercise to medical care and in the workplace, it's everywhere. It's out there. Whether it's being talked about explicitly or not, it is always right underneath the surface. One thing that you'll hear a lot from people who are trying to argue that fat phobia doesn't exist, or diet culture isn't real, or thin privilege isn't a real thing, and that we don't even really have to be talking about or worrying about any of this, is that, you know, fat activists or people who are allies for the fat acceptance and body acceptance movements, they really just want, you know, it's all just about clothes and seats on airplanes. And while, yes, those are, you know, real experiences that people have, not being able to find fashionable clothes or comfortable clothes in their size, or affordable clothes in their size, not being able to find seats on things like airplanes or other public spaces that are accommodating and safe to their bodies, that is not the end of the story. It goes so much deeper than those things, and trying to just write it off as just these like superficial, like, oh, it's just about clothes, it's just about fashion, like, why is that even that important, misses the whole point. Our culture and the fat phobic system that we live in is willing to shape itself to fit the needs of thin people and expects fat people to change to fit the culture and the system. And that expectation that the world around you will work for you and you don't need to change for the world, that is a prime example of thin privilege. So, kind of to wrap that up, thin privilege in its most basic definition is the absence of experiencing systemic discrimination and oppression based on fat phobia and based on your body size. So if you live in a body that is generally considered thin, generally considered fit or healthy or attractive, you likely experience a level of thin privilege. Now, it's not a black and white thing. There is certainly a spectrum. You know, people who wear plus size clothing but are not considered to be too big experience a level of thin privilege over people who are bigger than them, but the people who are smaller than them and wear straight size clothing or who are considered to be thin or skinny will experience thin privilege over them. So it is a spectrum. It is not supposed to be like, it's not a perfect definition. It's not supposed to rank people, and we're going to get into more of what thin privilege is not. But basically, it's this framework that we can look at things through to figure out kind of where things are going wrong in our society, why people are being devalued for something like their body size that doesn't actually say anything about human worth or value. And when we can view the system through this lens, it can help us figure out ways we can change it for the better. So now I want to go over some misconceptions, and these are so common. These are things that I talked about with my friend in that conversation the other week. These are things that I see rampant in comments on blog posts and Instagram posts, in these YouTube videos that I was talking about that are so problematic and just missing the point. So I want to go over those now. Okay, so the first misconception is that some people think that the words thin privilege, that the term thin privilege is implying that thin bodies are better. You know, it's saying that thin people deserve privileges, that they deserve to live better lives and have better access and have more opportunity than fat people. And this is not correct. This is not what the term thin privilege means. Thin privilege, that term and the way that it's used in, you know, academia and in the research in fat studies, is not saying that it should be this way. You know, thin privilege the term is acknowledging that this is the reality of the system we're in now. It's not saying that this is the way that society should be. All right, so that's the big one. Like, saying that I experience thin privilege, that is not me bragging. It's not me saying that I think I'm better than other people because I'm thin. It's saying that I acknowledge that I live within a system where my body is held at a higher value than bodies that are larger than mine. And so my experience of thin privilege, like, I don't take that to be like a positive thing, because even though it's me inadvertently experiencing benefits because of the system I live within, I'm acknowledging that me experiencing those benefits means that the system is causing harm to others. So the term thin privilege encapsulates all of that it benefits some people and harms others, and the net effect of that is not good. So thin privilege is not a positive thing, it is not a compliment, and it is not like the ideal. So that means it's also not what people should be striving for. You know, one of the kind of hallmarks of the weight loss industry is selling this idea that if you just do this diet, if you just do this workout program, if you just like work the system and become thin, then your life will be better because you will now experience thin privilege. They don't say it in that many words, but that is the message, that you can ascend this ladder, you can ascend this hierarchy of bodies to attain more thin privilege, and that is what will make you happy. And that is the goal of weight loss. So in fat acceptance, body positivity, the anti-diet world, anti-diet culture, all of these spaces in activism and online, the goal is not to help more people attain privilege by losing weight and making their bodies smaller. The goal is to break down the system so people are not valued based on their body size at all. The next misconception, which is sort of the opposite, is that saying that someone has privilege is saying that they're a bad person. I think in this current political climate, the word privilege is sort of turned into a dirty word. People see it as an insult or an attempted insult. They see it as offensive. But it's not that at all. And if you are taking the word privilege as offensive, I believe you're just misunderstanding what it means, and you just need to do a little bit more investigation into what is being talked about when the word privilege is used. So, like I said, thin privilege is just the absence of experiencing oppression in a fat-phobic society. So, if someone says to you, well, but you experience thin privilege, they are not saying that you're mean. They're not saying that you are being actively oppressive on purpose. They're not saying that you're a bad person. Experiencing privilege doesn't mean any of those things. All it means is that you are inadvertently getting benefit from a system that values you over others. And getting that benefit doesn't make you a bad person, but once you know about that benefit, if you are not willing to acknowledge that the system is working in your favor, you gotta look at what you're doing. All right, I'm not here to tell anybody that they are a good or bad person. And I'm just here to say that acknowledging that you have privilege, being someone who experiences privilege doesn't make you bad. It means the system is working in your favor and not in someone else's. That's it. Just because of differences that shouldn't have anything to do with how someone is valued or not. And this goes for other types of privilege too. I also experience white privilege because I am white. White privilege causes a lot of harm in the world, in society. A lot of, violence and discrimination and oppression towards people who are not white. That doesn't make me a bad person because I am white. The fact that I have white privilege just means that I benefit from that system. What would make me a bad person is if I were to take the fact that I have privilege as evidence that I am better, and then I go out and mistreat people based on their race. So if you are thin and you experience thin privilege, which if you are thin, you do, and then you use that as a reason to go and mistreat people who are in larger bodies, that makes you a bad person. But just being in a thin body doesn't make you a bad person, and someone saying that you have thin privilege is not an insult. It's not an offensive term. We got to reframe the way we're talking about these things and the way we're thinking about these things so that we can have more productive conversations. All right, next misconception. So one thing that I hear a lot from thin people is, well, I experience body shaming too. You know, I was teased for being too skinny. I get told to eat it. Like, I get told I need to eat a sandwich, all these things. And yes, I've experienced that stuff too. But there's a difference between singular instances of bullying that are interpersonal. So like between one person and another, one person calling someone else a name, or, you know, saying something mean to someone else because of their body type. That's an interpersonal interaction. It is awful and it shouldn't happen. It is an experience of body shaming that is 100% valid. However, the fact that thin people are also body shamed doesn't change the fact that institutionally and systematically, fat people are not treated as well as thin people. Exactly like I was saying before, in workplaces, in medical settings, the general assumptions that we make about fat people in regards to their health and their character, those things are bigger than just one person saying to someone else, you're too skinny, you need to eat a sandwich. So experiencing thin privilege can happen at the same time as experiencing body shame. Okay, so someone can be shaming you. You can feel shame about your body because it is too small or because you think you are too thin. And at the same time, in the world at large, in your culture, you will still be experiencing benefits because of thin privilege. Does that make sense? Like, people aren't going to automatically assume that you have all kinds of chronic illnesses because of your size. People are not automatically going to assume that you are lazy and untrustworthy because of your body. Someone might come up to you and say something mean. You know, you might have someone in your life who is being really toxic and awful to you, but you still experience thin privilege on a grand scale compared to someone else in a larger body. So those are two different things. They're both related to body shaming, and, you know, body shaming of fat people, like, absolutely happens a lot, all the time, especially in YouTube and Instagram comments. And your experience as a thin person being body shamed or experiencing shame about your body is 100% valid and traumatic, and you get to deal with that however you want to, and you deserve to heal from that and seek out help and go through that healing process. But it doesn't mean that thin privilege doesn't exist. You still experience thin privilege even if you experience body shaming. That was a big lesson I had to learn. I hope I explained that well and it made sense, because that is a big point. All right, and the last misconception that I want to go over is that the concept of thin privilege, the term thin privilege, also doesn't erase other experiences of oppression. Okay? Body size is just one aspect of identity or one aspect of a person that can be oppressed or can be used as a reason to inflict oppression on someone. There are lots of others. We've already talked about some of them. We've talked about gender. We've talked about race. The concept of thin privilege doesn't erase other forms of oppression. So a trans Black woman will still experience systematic racism and systematic transphobia, even if she is experiencing some benefit from thin privilege. Does that make sense? And a fat white man will still be experiencing the benefits of male privilege and of white privilege while experiencing the oppression of fat phobia, you know, while not experiencing thin privilege. So these things are very complex. We can't really paint them in black and white ways, and this is why intersectionality is so important. Okay, right now we're talking about thin privilege, but it does fit into a greater picture that is so much bigger than just this one conversation. So that's why you can't say thin privilege doesn't exist because I'm oppressed in other ways. Like, thin privilege doesn't exist because I'm oppressed because of XYZ. Thin privilege exists and you're experiencing oppression because of XYZ. You know, those things can happen simultaneously because our world is complicated and the systems of privilege and oppression in our world are also very complicated. So we can talk about thin privilege as it is. We can talk about it in a sort of isolated way, but it also fits into this bigger picture and it doesn't erase those other things either. All right, I had to turn the camera back on to film this part because forgot to take note of this, but this is also super important, and I know the YouTube trolls will come for me if I don't mention it, because one comment that I see all the time on YouTube videos and in Instagram captions and stuff talking about thin privilege is, oh yeah, those starving Africans with all their thin privilege. No, stop. Thin privilege, like I've been talking about this whole video, is a product of like Western culture, okay? This is not necessarily a rule that can be applied to every single culture on earth. It is culturally specific. So the culture that I live in is, I live in the United States, okay? We are a part of that like Western culture, and really anywhere that has a diet culture with this particular hierarchy of bodies is going to, you know, have these issues with fat phobia and thin privilege. So no, it can't be applied across the board to all cultures, to all countries, to all people in all situations. It is a framework. It is, you know, just like everything else, a construct. It is not a rule. So finding exceptions to it doesn't make it untrue in the context that I'm talking about it in today. Okay, so that was a lot. Like I said before, I hope it all made sense. If you have questions, I really want you to post them because I know this was not a complete conversation. I am not an authority on these topics. You know, I am a thin person. I don't have experience with, you know, fat phobia in the way that a person in a larger body does. So I can only speak from the education that I've given myself through reading and listening to people who have had these experiences and who are experts. So yeah, please let me know if you have any questions. And I want to wrap this video up just by giving you, the thin person watching this video, who I am making this video for, who I am trying to educate, a list of ways that you can kind of use this information. So it's not just sort of sitting there bouncing around in your head. What do you do with all of this? The first thing, and maybe the most important thing, is to listen to and believe fat people when they talk about their experiences with weight stigma and fat phobia. The amount of just silencing and gaslighting and denial that I see on the internet and in real life when people in larger bodies try to talk about their experiences, it's just astounding to me. Like, it's sickening. It's not surprising. I shouldn't say it's astounding because I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked. I know about how all of this works. I know that this stuff exists. So I'm not surprised that it happens. But it needs to stop. We need to stop telling fat people that we know better than them and that they don't know their own experience or don't understand their own experience. Read the things that they are writing, watch the videos that they are making, consume the content that fat people are putting out there to educate you, and believe what they are saying. And if you have questions, Google it. All right? There's lots of answers out there. So much of what I've already said in this video, this is not new information. This has been all over the internet for years. But because it's mostly been, you know, people in larger bodies who have been writing about and talking about this stuff, it hasn't gone viral because nobody trusts them. Nobody listens to them. And that's kind of what we have to try to fix here. You know, you trust me and you're listening to me and you made it to this point in the video to a certain extent because I'm thin, and so inherently you can trust me more. Inherently, I must know what I'm talking about because I'm in a good body. And that is that hierarchy that we need to break down. So listen to fat people, believe fat people, elevate their voices and the work that they are putting out there, because they know better than we do what they are going through, okay? And their voices deserve to be heard. So give them a platform, share their stuff, and most importantly, believe what they are saying about their own experiences. The second thing that you should be doing with this new knowledge is use it as a catalyst to start to investigate the own internalized fat phobia that you have inside. Because honestly, a lot of the body shame that we all experience, a lot of it comes down to internalized fat phobia. And so, understanding that this is what's going on in the world can really contextualize a lot of the things that we believe and a lot of the things that we feel about ourselves and our own personal lives. So use this as an opportunity. Start to ask yourself questions. You know, why do I believe this about people in this type of body? Why do I believe that about this person in this other type of body? This is your chance to explore. You don't have to get it right away. It's a process. All of this stuff is learning. No one expects you to just watch this video and come out of the gates understanding everything about about social justice, especially and like when it comes to like body size discrimination. No one's expecting that. Just use this as a chance to start that educational journey and seek out new information. Ask questions and try to answer them for yourself as best as you can. And the last thing that I'm going to ask you to do today, even though there is so much more I could say, I'm just going to leave it here, is to demand better representation and size inclusivity from the media and brands that you support. So this means that seeing a wider range of body sizes, in the media that you consume, you know, on your Instagram feed, in the movies you watch, in the, you know, YouTube creators that you follow. Seek it out, support the people who are already doing it well, and then demand more of that from the brands that you want to see it from. And then similarly, size inclusivity. A lot of this, there's really great strides happening in the clothing industry, especially with underwear and athletic wear. So finding the brands that go beyond a 2X, go up to a 4X, go down to a 3 extra small. Super Fit Hero is a great brand. I know Third Love is doing great things with bra sizes, but you know, supporting the brands who are already doing it well and making it clear that even though you don't need to take advantage of these extended sizes, that you want the people who do need them to be able to take advantage. You know what I mean? Just because it doesn't affect you personally doesn't mean you don't have to care. All right, y'all, I hope you found this video informative and positive, and I hope that it cleared up some of the misconceptions that you may have had about what thin privilege is and what it is not. I hope it gave you a better understanding of the fat-phobic diet culture that we live in and what you can start to do to break down this system that is oppressing so many people that are around you every day. All right, I have included some links to the websites and works from some amazing fat activists, writers, and content creators who know this stuff way better than I do and who you should be following to continue your education on this subject. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Be sure to like and subscribe and go follow me on Instagram. That is where I am most active.